There is a recording sitting in a basement archive in Washington, D.C., filed in a box of weather reports from 1968. It shouldn't be there. If you play it, you hear static at first. But turn it up, way up past the point where it hurts, and you hear a kid screaming. He isn't calling for extraction. He isn't calling for a medic. He is begging for an airstrike on his own position. He's telling the pilots to burn the jungle to the bedrock because, and I quote, "the stone won't stop moving." That tape is the only proof I have. The rest, well, the rest lives in the silence between my heartbeats. You probably think I'm crazy. I would. But let me tell you, that silence is loud. My name is Miller. Back in '68, I was a captain with MACA-VSOG, Command and Control Central. If you know what that means, you know I'm not supposed to be talking about this. We were the guys they sent to places that didn't officially exist, to fight wars that weren't officially happening. Sterile uniforms. No rank, no name tapes, no unit patches. We carried rucksacks heavy with ammo, knowing that if we got killed or captured across the border, the US government would just deny we were ever born. Ghosts, basically. We called the target area the Green Hell. It was a sector of triple canopy jungle straddling the border, a place where the maps just stopped. Intel had been tracking NVA supply columns moving into that valley for months. Convoys of trucks, battalions of foot soldiers, heavy equipment. They'd go into that grid square and just vanish. Never came out the other side. The brass thought it was a tunnel complex. They wanted to know where the supplies were going. So they sent us. Recon Team Arkansas. I was the 1-0, the team leader. My 1-1, the radio operator, was a kid named Sully. 22, from somewhere in Ohio. Ears like a bat. He treated his PRC-77 radio like it was a religious artifact, constantly tuning, listening to the static like it was trying to tell him secrets. Then there was Tex, our heavy weapons man, a giant of a human being who carried an M60 machine gun like it was a toy. Tex didn't talk much, just grunts and bursts of 7.62 millimeter. He was the rock we anchored ourselves to when the world went sideways. And finally, Dow. Dow was our indigenous scout, a Montagnard we'd recruited from the highlands. Small, wiry, moved through the jungle with a silence that made you question if he was actually touching the ground. But on the morning of the insertion, Dow was different. He was quiet, even for him. Kept touching the amulets around his neck, eyes fixed on the ridgeline of the target valley like he could see something hovering over it that we couldn't. The insertion was a bright light drop, high altitude, straight into a clearing. I remember the ride in, the Huey vibrating, wind whipping through the open doors, smelling of aviation fuel and ozone. Below us, the jungle was a solid carpet of green. But as we got close to the target, the landscape changed. The trees looked darker. The canopy seemed to close up like a fist. The pilot held up 2 fingers. 2 minutes. I looked at the team. Tex was checking the feed tray on his pig. Sully was staring out the door, hand pressed against his headset, frowning. "You getting anything?" I shouted over the rotor wash. Sully shook his head. "Just static, Cap. But it's rhythmic, like a heartbeat." "Ignore it," I said. "Just keep a channel open for the FAC." We flared out over the LZ. "Go, go, go," the crew chief screamed. We piled out, boots hitting the mud. The moment the last man was clear, the bird lifted off, banking hard and disappearing. The sound of the rotors faded. swallowed by the density of the forest. And then, the silence hit us. If you've ever been in the jungle, you know it's never quiet. It's a cacophony of life. Insects, monkeys, birds, the wind. It's a wall of noise you learn to tune out. But this was dead silence. Absolute suffocating stillness. No crickets, no birds. It felt like walking into a cathedral after the doors had been locked. We did a listening halt. 10 minutes in the mud, straining our ears. Nothing, just the sound of our own breathing. I signaled for us to move out. Dao took point. We moved slowly, stepping over roots. The air was thick, heavy with humidity. But it wasn't just the heat. There was a smell. It wasn't the usual rot of the jungle. This smelled old, like stagnant water in a stone crypt, like dust that hadn't been disturbed in 1,000 years. 2 hours in, Sully tapped me on the shoulder. He looked pale. "Cap," he whispered. "The radio. It's doing it again." "The heartbeat?" "No," he said, swallowing hard. "Voices. I'm picking up chatter. But it's not NVA. It sounds like French." I frowned. "French? You mean like a colonial broadcast?" "No, sir. It sounds like tactical chatter. A patrol. They're calling for support. But the signal strength, it's burying the needle. It sounds like they're standing right next to us." I looked around the dense green walls. There was no one. "Ghost signals," I said, trying to sound confident. "Atmospheric skip. Maybe bouncing off the mountains." Sully didn't look convinced. "Sir, they're screaming. They're saying the trees are eating them." "Stow it, Sully," I ordered, maybe too harshly. We pushed on. The terrain leveled out as we reached the valley floor. The light was dim, filtered through layers of canopy. My compass started acting up, the needle drifting lazily instead of snapping north. I had to rely on Dao. That was when Dao stopped. He froze, his entire body rigid. He raised a fist. I moved up beside him. "What is it?" I whispered. Dao didn't answer. He was staring at the ground, at the base of a massive banyan tree. I followed his gaze. Half buried in the mud, tangled in the roots, was a marker. A stone obelisk. Perfectly square. Made of black, volcanic rock that seemed to absorb the light. It stood about 3 feet tall. The surface was carved with symbols, jagged, frantic scratches that looked less like a language and more like warning signs. "NVA marker?" I asked. I knew the answer. The NVA didn't haul polished monoliths into the middle of a war zone. Dao shook his head slowly. "Not NVA," he murmured. "Old. Very old. How old?" Dao looked at me, and for the first time I saw genuine terror in his eyes. Not the fear of death. This was spiritual. "Before the French," he said. "Before the kings. Before people." He pointed a trembling finger at the symbols. "This is a warning. In my village, the elders tell stories of the valleys where the spirits go to sleep. They say if you wake them, they get hungry. This stone, it marks the mouth." "The mouth of what?" "The mouth of the green hell," he whispered. Tex moved up. "Cap, we got movement. Rear flank. Something big moving in the brush." I spun around. "Sully, check the thermal if you got it. Tex, hold fire." We stood there. I could hear it now. A slow, heavy rustling. Not an animal. The deliberate crushing step of something heavy. Snap. Crack. "It's circling us," Tex whispered. "Dao, get us moving." I said. "We need to find better ground. This place is a kill box." We moved faster now. The jungle grew even denser. The heat was unbearable. My fatigues were soaked through. I checked my watch. We'd been moving for 4 hours, but covered maybe 2 clicks. The terrain was fighting us. Suddenly, Dao broke through a wall of elephant grass and stumbled forward. I reached out to grab him, thinking he was falling, but he caught his balance. I pushed through the grass behind him and stopped dead. We weren't in a ravine. We were standing on the edge of a road. But it wasn't a dirt track. It was a paved highway. Massive interlocking cobblestones made of that same black basalt, stretching out into the darkness in both directions. The stones were fitted so perfectly, you couldn't slide a knife blade between them. It was about 20 feet wide, straight as an arrow, cutting through the jungle. The trees grew right up to the edge of the stones, and then stopped. The road itself was pristine. No moss, no dirt, no leaves. It looked like it had been swept 5 minutes ago. "What in the hell?" Tex breathed, lowering his machine gun. "Cap, this ain't on the map." I pulled out my map. According to it, we were in the middle of untouched wilderness. No roads, no trails. "Sully," I said, "get me HQ. I need to verify our position." Sully knelt down. "Covey leader. This is Arkansas 10. Radio check. Over. Static. Heavy rolling static. Covey leader Arkansas 10. Do you copy?" "Nothing." Sully looked up. "I'm getting nothing, Cap. It's dead. But the other signal is stronger." "The French?" "Yeah, and something else." He held the handset out to me. "Listen." I pressed it to my ear. Through the hiss, I heard it. It was faint, but it was there. It sounded like a voice, whispering a string of numbers. Coordinates. Over and over again. But it wasn't French, and it wasn't Vietnamese. It was my voice. I stood there, staring at the black road, listening to a recording of myself reciting coordinates I hadn't visited yet. The jungle loomed over us, silent and watchful. "Cap?" Tex asked. "What do we do?" I looked down the road. It led deeper into the valley. "We follow it," I said, handing the handset back. "Keep your eyes open. If this road is here, someone built it. And if someone built it, they're probably watching it." I stepped out onto the black stones. My boots made a loud, crisp clack on the pavement. It felt like stepping onto a stage. Dao hesitated, muttered something in his dialect, touched his amulet, and stepped onto the stone. We began to walk. The light began to fail, turning the world into shades of gray. That's when I saw it. About 50 yards ahead, on the side of the road, was a shape, sitting on a stone plinth, motionless. I raised my fist. "Hold." I moved forward slowly. As I got closer, the shape resolved. It was a statue, a guard. It was a soldier, kneeling, head bowed, holding a rifle. But as I got within 10 feet, the details jumped out at me, and my blood ran cold. The statue wasn't depicting an ancient warrior. It was wearing a uniform. It had webbing, pouches, boots. The rifle was an M1 Garand. The helmet was World War II era gear. I reached out and touched the stone shoulder. Cold, smooth, hard as diamond. The detail was impossible. I could see the texture of the fabric, the laces on the boots, the fear etched into the stone face. "Cap." Sully called out. "You need to see this." I turned back. Sully was pointing at a patch of mud just off the pavement. There was a cigarette butt lying there. A lucky strike. And the ember was still glowing red. A thin trail of smoke curled up into the stagnant air. I stood up, crushing the cigarette. The heat stung my palm. "Someone's here," I said. "Right now." "Cap," Tex said, his voice dropping an octave. "Look at the statue again." I turned back to the stone soldier I had just examined. The statue had moved. It wasn't kneeling anymore. It was standing up. Its stone head was turned, facing directly at us. The empty carved eyes seemed to be looking right through me. I heard the safety click off on Tex's M60. "Perimeter!" I shouted. "Defensive positions! Now!" But before we could move, the jungle exploded with sound. Not gunfire. It was the sound of 1,000 radios turning on at once, a screech of feedback that tore through the air. And underneath the static, a voice boomed out, echoing from the trees, from the stones. It was a broadcast, a loop. "Mayday! Mayday! This is Baker 6. We are surrounded. The stones are taking the men. Drop it all! Drop it on us! Now!" The transmission cut to static. I looked at Sully. He was staring at his radio. "Cap," he whispered. "That broadcast, that's not coming from a radio. Where is it coming from?" Sully pointed at the ground, at the black stones beneath our feet. "It's coming from inside the road." I looked down. The black stones were vibrating. Deep within the dark volcanic rock, faint lines of green light began to pulse, like veins pumping bioluminescent blood. The road wasn't just a road. It was a machine, and we were standing on top of the circuit board. "Move!" I roared. "Get off the road!" "Into the trees!" We scrambled for the tree line, diving into the brush just as the humming rose to a deafening pitch. I rolled behind the cover of the massive banyan tree. I looked back at the road. The light faded. The humming stopped. The silence returned. But the statue was gone. The plinth was empty. "Where is it?" Tex hissed. "Where did it go?" I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing for certain. We weren't hunting a supply line anymore. We had walked into something that had been waiting for us. And as the last light of day vanished, I realized that the intelligence reports were wrong. The enemy battalions hadn't vanished. They were still here. We stayed behind that banyan tree for what felt like an hour. The silence that had reclaimed the valley was worse than the noise. I did a head count. 3 shadows in the gloom. Sully was curled over his radio, checking connections. Tex was prone behind a root system. Dow was squatting, facing the jungle. "Sitrep," I whispered. "Radio is dead, Cap," Sully whispered back. "Physically, it's fine. But the spectrum, it's empty. It's like someone put a lead dome over this entire valley. Tex, clear right. But I don't like it. That statue. Cap. Stone don't move. I had eyes on it. It stood up. I saw it too, I said. We're dealing with something sophisticated. Maybe hallucinogens. Maybe some kind of projection system. If we've been dosed with something, we need to stay sharp. Trust your training, not your eyes. It was a lie, and we all knew it. But the lie gave us a framework. We can't stay here, I said. We parallel the road, 50 meters inside the tree line. We find out where it goes. Dow stood up slowly. The road goes to the city, he said softly. The Stone Eaters. We should go back, Captain. We should climb the ridge and leave this place. We have a mission, Dow, I said. We find the supply hub, then we leave. There are no supplies here, he said. Only memories. We moved out. The formation was tight. The jungle here was different. The trees were older, massive hardwoods. And the further we walked, the more the line between nature and architecture began to blur. At first, it was subtle. A route that looked too square. A vine that followed a perfect 90-degree angle. But soon, it was undeniable. We weren't walking through a forest anymore, we were walking through the wreckage of a perimeter. Blocks of black basalt lay scattered among the ferns. We passed a wall that had been swallowed by a strangler fig, the stone masonry still visible, and there was no decay. In the green hell, everything rots. Metal rusts in a week. Stone gets covered in moss. But these stones were naked. They were clean. It was as if the vegetation was repelled by the rock itself. We moved for another hour. The ground sloped downward. A strange ambient light began to filter through the trees. A pale, sickly gray luminescence, seeming to radiate from the mist. Cap, Tex whispered from the rear. Up ahead, the trees break. I signaled a halt. I moved up to Dow's position and gently pushed the frond aside. My breath hitched. The valley floor opened up into a massive bowl-shaped depression. Filling it, stretching from one side of the jungle to the other, was a city. It reminded me of pictures of Angkor Wat, but those comparisons felt cheap. This place was predatory. Towers spiraled up into the night, defying gravity, connected by high arching bridges. Everything, every wall, every spire, every paving stone, was made of that same light-absorbing black basalt. It lay in concentric circles, like rings of a target. The strange gray mist coiled through the streets like a living thing, obscuring the ground level, making the towers look like they were floating. God Almighty, Sully whispered. Who built this? No one built this, Dow said, his voice barely audible. It was here when the mountains were young. I pulled out my binoculars. The city was empty. No fires. No electric lights. It looked like a necropolis. Looks clear, I lied. We move in. We head for that central plaza. If there's a command and control node, it'll be in the biggest structure. We approached the outer wall. It was 30 feet high, seamless, sheer. We found a gate, a massive archway with no doors, just a gaping maw. As we stepped through, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. The air inside was stagnant, smelling of ozone and something metallic, like the taste of a penny. Our boots on the stone sounded like gunshots. We moved block by block. The buildings were windowless on the ground floor, looming over us like tombstones. We reached a secondary plaza. It opened up into a wide, paved circle dominated by a dry fountain in the center. Hold up, Tex grunted. Contact front, 12 o'clock, in the plaza. We froze. In the center of the plaza there were shapes, rectangular, low to the ground. Sandbags. It's a defensive perimeter, I whispered. We bounded forward. As we got closer, the shapes resolved. It was a military encampment. Standard triangular perimeter, sandbag emplacements. But it wasn't NVA. It was a French camp. I recognized the gear immediately. Crates stenciled with Armée de Terre. MAT 49 submachine guns leaned against the sandbags. Helmets with the distinct ridge of the French M51 model sat on top of rucksacks. Where are they? Sully asked, spinning in a slow circle. Where are the bodies? There were no bodies. No blood trails. No signs of a struggle. The camp hadn't been overrun. It looked like the men had just vanished. Maybe they bugged out, Tex suggested. Without their weapons? I walked over to a machine gun position. A heavy FM 24-29 light machine gun was set up on the sandbags, a magazine inserted. You don't leave your heavy guns behind unless you're dead. I walked toward the center of the camp, where a small folding table was set up. There was a map spread out on it. I shone my red lens flashlight on it. The date in the corner stopped me cold. October 1952. 16 years ago. This camp had been sitting here for 16 years. Cap, Sully said. Come look at this. He was standing near a small portable stove. A metal pot was sitting on it. I walked over. What is it? Put your hand over it. I reached out, hovering my hand over the pot. Heat. Radiant, intense heat. The liquid inside was simmering. Bubbles popped with soft sounds. I touched the handle of a metal cup. It was hot to the touch. I sniffed it. Coffee. Fresh coffee. The steam was rising into the cool air. This is impossible, I whispered. 16 years. They didn't leave 16 years ago, Tex said, backing away. They left 5 minutes ago. Cap, we missed them by seconds. Look at the uniforms, I argued. Lizard pattern camo. That's Indochina war issue. No one wears that anymore. Maybe they never left, Dow said from the edge of the light. He was refusing to enter the circle. Maybe the stone keeps them, like a fly in amber. I looked around the camp with new eyes. It wasn't just preserved, it was frozen. A half-smoked cigarette rested in an ashtray, a long column of ash defying gravity. A pen lay on an open notebook, the ink glistening wetly. Sully, I snapped. Check their comms. See if they have a long-range set. Sully moved to a communications tent. Got a SCR 300 here, Cap. Looks functional. Power light is on. See if you can raise anyone. I walked back to the map. The French commander had drawn question marks all over the perimeter. And in the margins, in frantic handwriting, he had written, Ils sont dans les murs. Ils nous regardent. My high school French was rusty. They are in the walls. They are watching us. Cap, Sully yelled from the tent. You need to hear this. I ran to the tent. Sully was kneeling over the bulky French radio, wearing the headset. I tried to tune it, Sully said. I found a carrier wave, but look at the signal strength. He tapped the analog gauge. The needle was pinned to the far right. Maximum signal. It's close, I said. No, Cap. A signal this strong. The transmitter would have to be touching the antenna. It would have to be in the tent with us. What's the audio? He turned the volume knob. Static. Then a grinding sound, like two heavy stones being rubbed together. Underneath the grinding, a voice, a man's voice, breathless, panicked, whispering in rapid-fire French. Pierre? Pierre, are you there? I can't see. It's dark. The stone, it's wrapped around my legs. I can't move. Pierre, help me. It's pulling me in. The voice cracked. Why is the coffee smelling so good? I can smell the coffee, Pierre, but I can't reach it. I'm right here. Why can't you see me? I'm right next to the fire. I stared at the radio, then turned slowly to look at the simmering pot of stew and the steaming cup of coffee just outside the tent flap. the empty space beside the fire. "He's seeing us," I whispered. "He's not in 1952. He's here. Right now." "Where?" Tex yelled, spinning around. "Where the hell is he?" Sully pulled the headset off. "The signal, Cap. It's not coming from a radio." He pointed toward the massive windowless building that loomed over the plaza. "It's coming from the wall," Sully said. "From inside the masonry. He's inside the stone." I stepped out of the tent. I looked at the black wall of the building. It was seamless. Solid. "Pierre," the voice on the radio screamed, echoing through the small speaker. "They are walking through the camp. I see them. The Americans. Why don't they help me? Why are they just watching?" I felt a chill. I looked at the space next to the fire again. The air there seemed to shimmer, just for a second, like heat haze on a highway. "Cap," Tex said. "The spoon." I looked at the pot of stew. A metal spoon was resting in the liquid. As I watched, it lifted. Just an inch. It tilted, as if someone had scooped up a mouthful, hovered in the air for a split second, and then dropped back into the pot with a wet clink. Ripples spread across the surface. Someone was eating. Someone we couldn't see, trapped in a layer of reality we couldn't touch, was sitting right there, eating his dinner while screaming for help on a radio frequency that shouldn't exist. "Get back," I ordered, backing away. "Everyone back to the edge of the light. Do not touch anything." We retreated to the edge of the sandbags. The mist swirled around us, thicker now. "We need to leave," Dow said. "The hungry spirits are confused. If we stay, we become like them." Before I could answer, a sound cut through the plaza. It came from the dark street we had just entered from. The sound of heavy boots on stone. Lots of them, marching. Clack. 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 Tex swung the M60 toward the street. "Contact! Rear!" We dropped behind the sandbags. The marching grew louder. It sounded like a platoon. "I don't see 'em," Tex hissed. The footsteps reached the edge of the plaza. They stopped. Then, a voice rang out. Clear, authoritative, in English. "Column halt! Perimeter defense! Set up the pig on the left flank. Move!" My blood froze. I knew that voice. I knew the cadence. It was Tex. "That's me," Tex whispered. "Cap, that's me giving orders. Sully, check the radio," I hissed. "Is that us? Is that a recording?" Sully shook his head. "Radio's off, Cap. That's acoustic. That's real sound." From the darkness, another voice spoke. "Sitrep? 10?" That was Sully's voice. And then, my voice answered from the shadows. "We hold here. We wait for daylight. If the road moves again, we burn it." I looked at my team. We were all crouched behind the sandbags of a dead French unit, listening to ourselves marching into the plaza to kill us. "They're echoing us," Dow whispered. "The stone takes the sound. It takes the shape. It makes a copy." "If that's a copy," Tex growled, racking the slide on his machine gun, "then it can bleed." "Hold fire," I ordered. "If you shoot, you give away our position." The footsteps started again. The invisible column was moving into the plaza, heading straight for us. I looked at the black wall of the tower behind us, where the French soldier was screaming inside the stone. I looked at the empty street in front of us. We were pinned between the ghosts of the past and the echoes of the present. "Into the tower," I said. It was a desperate call. "The building behind us. The door is open. We get inside, we funnel them." "Cap, the Frenchman is in there," Sully warned. "Better the devil in the wall than the one with a gun," I said. "Move! Go!" We broke cover, sprinting across the open ground, heading for the gaping black archway of the central tower. As I ran, I felt a wind pick up, cold and biting, blowing out of the tower door. I hit the threshold and spun around, raising my rifle to cover the team. Tex dove through the door, followed by Sully and Dow. I looked back at the plaza. The mist had cleared for a second, and in that moment, I saw them. They weren't invisible anymore. Standing at the edge of the light, where the French camp met the darkness, were 4 figures. They were wearing our uniforms. They were carrying our weapons. They were us, down to the last detail. But their faces were smooth, featureless slabs of black stone. The stone miller raised its car 15 and pointed it directly at me. I didn't wait to see if it would fire. I turned and ran into the dark, the heavy stone doors of the tower grinding shut behind us, with a sound like a tomb being sealed. We were inside. The sound of that stone door grinding shut was heavier than any artillery impact I'd ever heard. The boom reverberated through the soles of my boots, followed instantly by a silence so absolute it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. We were in total darkness. "Lights!" I hissed. "Red lens only. Keep it low." The click of switches echoed like gunshots. 3 red beams cut through the gloom. "Clear right," Tex breathed. "Clear left," Sully whispered. I took a breath. It was a trick, Tex. A projection. We've seen what the NVA can do with decoys. This is just advanced. It's a psychological operation. They want us to panic. A projection? Tex snapped. A projection don't cast a shadow, Cap. A projection don't carry a pig. That thing had my gun. It had my face. But it didn't have no eyes. I saw it too, I said. But it didn't fire. We're inside. We secure this position. We find a secondary exit. I swept my light around the space we had retreated into. It was a hall, vast and high-ceilinged, like the nave of a cathedral. The air here was cold, bone-dry, and smelled of ozone and something ancient. "Dow," I said, "what is this place?" Dow touched one of the massive pillars. "This is the stomach," he whispered. "The mouth eats. The stomach keeps. This is where the stone remembers." I didn't like the sound of that. "Sully, check the comms again. See if the stone walls blocking the door cut the interference." Sully sat down. "Dead air, Cap." "But the humming is gone. The French signal is gone. It's just quiet." "Tex, you have the door. Dow, on me. We're going to sweep the perimeter of this room." We moved deeper into the structure. The floor was perfectly smooth, polished to a mirror sheen. As we moved away from the door, I started to notice the walls. They weren't smooth. They were textured, covered in carvings. I moved my light up the wall. It was a bas-relief. At first, the images made sense. Figures carrying spears, riding elephants, ancient warfare. But as we walked further, the images changed. The elephants were replaced by horses. The spears became muskets. I saw figures in pith helmets. The weapons became bolt-action rifles. "Cap," I whispered. "It's a timeline. I saw the Japanese occupation forces. I saw the Viet Minh. And then I stopped. The carving in front of me was fresh. The edges were sharp. It showed a helicopter. A UH-1 Huey, carved with such precision I could see the rivets. It was hovering over a jungle canopy. Below it, tiny figures were rappelling down ropes. I moved the light to the right. I saw a patrol moving through the bamboo. They were wearing jungle fatigues. One of the figures was large, carrying a machine gun. Another was small, carrying a radio with a long whip antenna. It was us. I reached out and touched the stone. It was cold, but the carving felt vibrant, as if the stone was still settling into the shape. "Dao," I said. "Look at this." Dao wouldn't look. "Do not look at the wall, Captain. If you look, it sees you looking. It's us, Dao. It's recording us. It is digesting us," he corrected. "The stone takes the shape. It takes the spirit. When the body dies, the stone keeps the war." I moved the light further right, to the next panel. It was blank. A smooth, dark slab of obsidian waiting for the chisel. The implication hit me. The city wasn't just a ruin. It was an archive. A library of conflict. It drew combatants in, consumed them, and then filed them away on these walls as a permanent record. The French unit outside? They were just a chapter in a book that had been written for thousands of years. And we were the next page. "Cap," Sully's voice echoed. "You need to get back here. The radio." I turned and sprinted back. "What is it? Did you raise Covey?" Sully was staring at the handset like it was a venomous snake. "It's not Covey. Listen." He turned the volume knob. Static washed over us. Then, a woman's voice. Soft. Distorted, but undeniable. "Make sure you pack the extra socks, baby. It gets cold at night. And don't try to be a hero. You just come back to me and the girls. You hear me? Just come back." Tex let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob. He dropped to his knees. "Mary? Is that you?" "That's her voice, Cap," Tex yelled. "That's Mary. That's the last thing she said to me at the airport." "How?" The voice looped. Then it shifted. A child's voice. A little girl, singing a nursery rhyme. "Row, row, row your boat." My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. It was my daughter, Sarah. "Daddy?" the voice said. "Daddy, are you in the dark? Mommy says you're in the jungle, but I had a dream you were in the dark place, with the stone men. Daddy, wake up." I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just mimicry. This was invasive. It was pulling memories out of our heads. "Turn it off," I said. "Sully, turn it off." "I can't," Sully cried. "The power switch is off. The battery is disconnected. Look, it's running on nothing but the energy of this place." "It knows us," Dao whispered. "It tastes the blood. It knows the names." "Mary," Tex screamed. "Tex, stop it," I shouted, grabbing him. "That is not your wife. Look at the wall, Tex. Look at the carvings." "It wants to put you on the wall." The radio static surged again. The personal voices vanished, replaced by a chaotic storm of tactical chatter. Gunfire. Screaming. Explosions. "Contact front! They're in the wire! Medic! I'm bleeding out! Oh God, the stone is moving!" "It's in my leg." I froze. That was my voice. But it wasn't a memory. I had never said those words. "Miller is down! The captain is down! They took his face!" That was Sully screaming. "Burn it! Burn it all! Airstrike on my pose! Danger close! Do it. That was the recording from the cold open. The tape we found in the archives. That hasn't happened yet, Sully whispered. Cap, that's us. That's us in the future. It's a prediction, I said. Or a threat. It's telling us how we die. Or it's writing the script, Dow said. And we are just the actors. I looked at the blank panel on the wall again. The stone was waiting. It knew exactly what it was going to carve there. We are not dying here, I snarled. Sully, smash that radio. Sully grabbed the handset and smashed it against the stone floor. The voices stopped instantly. We need a way out, I said. This hall has to lead somewhere. If it's a temple, there's an altar. If it's a stomach, there's a gut. We go deeper. We moved out again, leaving the entrance behind. The hall seemed to stretch on forever. But as we walked, I noticed something else. The shadows. In the periphery of my vision, I kept seeing movement. Tall, thin shapes standing between the pillars. Cap, Sully whispered. Do you see them? Keep your eyes front, Sully. No. Look. To the left. In the relief carvings. I shone my light on the wall again. We had passed the Vietnam era. We were into something else now. The carvings here were strange. They showed soldiers, but the gear was wrong. Futuristic. Helmets with full faceplates, weapons that looked like blocks of metal with no barrels. And they were fighting shadows. That's not history, I said. Not yet, Dow murmured. We reached the end of the hall. It opened up into a massive circular chamber. In the center, a shaft of light beamed down from the ceiling. The light hit a raised dais in the center of the room, and on the dais there was a map. It wasn't paper. It was a three-dimensional model of the valley, carved from the same black stone. I walked up to it. It was perfect. Every ridge, every tree. And in the center of the model city, there were 4 tiny figurines. They were moving. I watched as the 4 tiny stone specks moved across the model floor. They stopped at the center. That's us, I whispered. It's tracking us. Cap, Tex said. Look at the plaza on the map. I looked. The model was swarming. Hundreds of tiny figures were pouring out of the buildings, surrounding the tower. They're setting up a siege, I said. Cap, Sully said. The sun. I looked up through the hole in the roof. The sky was purple, a deep, bruised purple. And across the opening, the sun was moving. Not drifting. Moving. It streaked across the sky like a tracer round. Darkness slammed into the room as the light shaft vanished. Time, I muttered. It's messing with time. Which means it's night, Tex said. And the freaks come out at night. A sound began to resonate through the floor, a rhythmic, synchronized thumping. Boom. 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 They're hitting the door, Sully said. No, Dow said. Not the door, the foundation. They are waking the rest of the house. The walls of the chamber began to groan. Dust rained down. And then, the carvings on the walls began to shift. It wasn't a hallucination. The stone was becoming liquid. The figures in the bas-reliefs were pulling themselves out of the wall. A stone hand gripped the edge of a frame. Perimeter, I screamed. Back to back. On the dais. We scrambled onto the raised platform. From the shadows, they emerged. They weren't just the copies of us anymore. They were the French. They were the Japanese. They were the ancient warriors, all of them carved from black stone. There were hundreds of them. "We can't fight this, Cap," Tex said. "I got maybe 600 rounds. That ain't enough. We just need to survive long enough to find the exit," I said. I looked at the stone map on the dice. The tiny figures representing us were surrounded. But there was one other thing. A faint, pulsing vein of light that ran under the city. A tunnel system. And the entrance was right here. I kicked the side of the dice. It sounded hollow. "Tex," I yelled. "The floor! Blow the floor! You want me to frag our own position? It's hollow. There's a way down. Do it." Tex pulled a grenade, pulled the pin, and dropped it at our feet. "Fire in the hole!" We dove flat. The explosion was deafening. The stone dais shattered. We fell. We tumbled into the dark, sliding down a chute of smooth, cold stone, leaving the chamber of living statues behind. We hit the bottom hard, rolling onto a floor covered in damp sand. I scrambled up, clicking my light back on. We were in a tunnel. Cables ran along the ceiling, thick, organic-looking cables that pulsed with green light. "Is everyone alive?" I coughed. "I'm good," Sully groaned. "Check," Tex grunted. "Cap," Sully said. "I'm hearing it again." "The radio is broken, Sully." "I know, but I'm hearing it in my head. The tactical chatter. The screaming." He looked at me. "They're not just outside anymore. Cap, they're in the net. They're jamming our thoughts." I looked down the tunnel. It stretched into the dark, pulsing like an artery. "We keep moving," I said. "We find the guts, and we cut them out." But as we began to walk, I heard it too. Faintly, at the back of my mind. "Miller is down. The captain is down." It was getting louder, and I knew, with a certainty that turned my blood to ice, that the blank panel on the wall upstairs was already being carved. We kept moving. The service tunnel was claustrophobic. The walls were lined with those thick, cable-like structures that glowed with a rhythmic, sickly green luminescence. Sully was walking point, but he was navigating by the noise in his skull. He held the severed cord of his headset in a white-knuckled grip. "It's the fire mission, Cap. They're calling it in, right now." "We're underground," I said. "There's no aircraft." "It's not noise," he whispered. "It's instructions." Behind me, Tex was breathing hard. "Cap, this tunnel is sloping up. We're climbing." He was right. The floor turned into a ramp. The pulsing cables were converging, bundling together into thicker conduits as they ascended. "Dow," I said. "Watch R6. Dow didn't answer. He was walking with his hand trailing along the wall. He looked resigned. "The roots go deep, Captain," he said softly. "Deeper than the trees. This place, it does not grow up, it grows down." "We're getting out," I promised him. The ramp steepened. Then, abruptly, the tunnel ended. It opened up into a massive, cavernous space. We stepped out, weapons raised. We were back on the surface, but it wasn't the plaza. We were in a trench system carved entirely out of black stone, high walls on either side. Above us, the sky was visible, that bruised, violent purple. "Where are we?" Tex whispered. I climbed up onto the firing step. We were on the edge of the city, but the city had changed. The buildings weren't just standing there anymore. They were shifting. I watched a 100-foot spire slowly rotate. Between the buildings, the jungle had returned. But it was stone. Trees made of black rock, with leaves of obsidian. "The green hell," I muttered. "It's literal." Then, the sound started. Thump. It was distant, dull, felt in the chest more than heard. "Mortars," Tex said. "Walking them in." We huddled against the stone wall. Thump. 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 The sound of the tubes firing was clear, but there was no flight noise, no explosions. "Duds?" Tex asked. "No," I said. "Soundtrack. It's setting the mood." As if in response, the trench exploded with noise. Small arms fire, the rattle of machine guns, the screams of men dying. It was deafening. The trench itself was the speaker. "Contact!" Tex roared. "Contact front!" I grabbed my car 15 and scrambled up. The petrified forest in front of us was alive with movement. The shadows detached themselves from the darkness. Hundreds of them. They took shape. I saw the silhouettes of French paratroopers. I saw Japanese infantry. I saw American GIs. And leading them, figures that looked exactly like us. They didn't have faces, just smooth, curved surfaces of black basalt. "They're coming," Tex yelled. "Range 200. Open fire." "Wait," I shouted. "Wait for a target." "They're all targets, Cap." The enemy line didn't scream. They raised their weapons in unison. Muzzle flashes erupted. Ping! Spang! Crack! Stone chips exploded from the parapet. "That's real," I screamed. "That's real lead. Open fire. Tex, light 'em up." Tex squeezed the trigger. The M60 roared. Tracers streaked out, slamming into the advancing wall of stone soldiers. I watched the impacts. It was a nightmare. When a bullet hit one of them, it shattered the stone. I saw arms blown off, heads cracked open. But they didn't fall. The rocks rolled. They pulled themselves back together, snapping into place with a wet, grinding sound. "They're not stopping," Tex screamed. "I'm hitting them. They just get back up." "Headshots," I yelled. "Break the command and control." I put 2 rounds into the face of a stone soldier that looked like a Marine. The head exploded, the body stumbled, and then the stone neck elongated, growing a new head in seconds. "Grenade!" Sully yelled. He hurled it over the wall. It landed in a cluster of Japanese infantry. I ducked. There was no boom. Instead, there was a sound like a high-tension wire snapping. Zzz, and a flash of green light. The grenade had unraveled. The explosive filler turned into a cloud of green mist. "Physics don't work here," Sully screamed. "The rules are wrong." "They're rewriting the rules." "Dow," I yelled. "Flank left." I stopped. Dow wasn't firing. He was standing on the bottom of the trench, staring at his feet. The floor of the trench was moving. The solid stone had turned viscous, like thick, black tar. It was bubbling around Dow's boots, rising up his shins. "Dow, move!" I lunged forward, grabbing his harness. "It is too late, Captain," he said. His voice was calm. "The stomach is full. Now the mouth must chew. Give me your hand." But the stone wasn't just holding him. It was becoming him. I watched in horror as the black basalt crept up his legs, turning his fatigues into rock. It wasn't coating him, it was replacing him. "Do not fight the city, Captain," he whispered. "The war feeds it. Every bullet is a prayer. Every death is a sacrifice. Stop the prayer. Dow, run," he breathed. "Run to the wound." Then the stone reached his neck. His face hardened. The details sharpened, and then froze. In seconds, he was gone. In his place stood a perfect black statue of Tao, screaming silently, half merged with the floor. I let go, stumbling back. He was gone, just like the French. Consumed. "Cap," Tex's voice broke. "I'm dry. Reloading." The M60 went silent, and in that second of silence, something happened. The firing from the tree line stopped. The stone soldiers had halted. They stood perfectly still, weapons raised. "Tex," I whispered. "Don't load." "What?" "Cap, they're right on top of us." "Don't load the weapon." "Sully, put your rifle down." "Are you crazy?" "Look at them," I shouted, pointing over the parapet. "Look." Tex froze. The enemy wasn't moving. As long as we weren't firing, they weren't firing. "It's a mirror," I said. Tao was right. It feeds on conflict. We shoot, they shoot. We use grenades, they change the physics. We are powering this whole damn thing. "So what do we do?" Sully whimpered. "We just stand here and die?" "No," I said. "We stop playing the game." I stood up fully, exposing myself above the trench line. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to take cover. The stone soldiers watched me with their eyeless faces. 1,000 rifles were pointed at my chest, but no one pulled the trigger. "They're waiting for input," I said. "They're waiting for us to write the next line of the script." "Cap," Sully said. "I hear it." "Hear what?" "The beacon." Sully stood up slowly. He dropped his rifle. The sound echoed like a bell. The stone soldiers flinched. He pointed toward the center of the city, toward the massive tiered spire that loomed over everything. "It's not a radio signal," Sully whispered. "It's a pull, like gravity." "Is it extraction?" Tex asked. "It's the end of the tape," Sully said. "It's where the recording stops." I looked at the spire. Between us and that building lay a mile of open ground. "If we fight our way there, we die," I said. "We'll run out of ammo." "So we walk?" Tex asked. "We run," I said. "We run. And we don't shoot. No matter what happens, you do not pull that trigger." Tex looked at the statue of Tao. He swallowed hard. He let the ammo belt drop to the ground. Clink, clink, clink. "I'm lighter without it," he said. "Okay," I said. "On my command." We vault the wall. We sprint. We don't stop for anything. I looked at the stone soldiers one last time. They seemed to lean in, hungry for the violence we were denying them. "Go!" We scrambled up the side of the trench, vaulting over the black parapet and landing in the petrified grass. The moment our boots hit the ground, the city screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure wave. The buildings groaned. And the stone soldiers, they changed. They dissolved. The distinct forms of the French and Japanese soldiers melted away, collapsing into liquid shadow that surged across the ground toward us. It was a tidal wave of darkness. "Don't look back," I yelled. We ran. We ran through the petrified forest. The ground behind us was being consumed. The wave of darkness was eating the city, rolling up the pavement, erasing the history. It was a reset button. And we were the glitch. "The spire!" Sully screamed. "The beacon!" We broke into the central plaza. It was vast. And in the center, at the base of the massive tower, the ground had opened up. It wasn't a door. It was a crater. a jagged, ugly wound. And coming from the pit was a light, a strobe. Flash, flash, flash. "That's a marker," Tex yelled. "That's a standard issue strobe. It's the extraction." Sully yelled, sprinting faster. But the city wasn't done. The ground in front of us began to ripple. The basalt rose up, knitting together, forming a wall between us and the pit. But it wasn't just a wall. It was taking a shape. It grew massive, 30 feet tall, a head that blocked out the purple sky. It was a soldier, a giant stone soldier. It looked down at us, and for the first time the stone face had features. It had my face. The giant stone miller raised a hand, palm out. The gesture was commanding. "Stop. Cap." Tex skidded to a halt. "Don't shoot." I tackled him. "Don't shoot it. It's blocking the way. It's a test." I scrambled up, staring at the giant version of myself. I holstered my pistol. I unslung my CAR-15 and let it drop to the ground. I held my empty hands up. "We are leaving," I screamed at the giant. "We are done." The giant paused. The stone hand hovered above us. The eyeless face stared down. Then, slowly, the hand lowered. The giant stepped aside. The wall of its body split, creating a narrow path leading straight to the pit. "Run!" I shoved Tex. "Into the hole!" We sprinted past the giant legs, feeling the cold radiation coming off the stone. We reached the edge of the crater and looked down. It was deep. The strobe was flashing from somewhere far below, in the dark. "Jump!" We didn't hesitate. We jumped into the void, leaving the city, the war, and the giant, with my face behind us. We fell into the dark, and for a long, terrifying second, the only sound was the wind rushing past our ears. Then we hit water. Cold, stagnant, foul-tasting water. I thrashed to the surface. "Sound off. Here." Tex sputtered. "Here," Sully said. I clicked my red light on. We were in a cavern, a natural cave. The walls were limestone, not black basalt. And on a dry shelf of rock 10 feet away, sitting alone in the dark, was a strobe light. Next to the strobe was a radio, a PRC-77. And sitting next to the radio, leaning against the cave wall, was a skeleton. It was wearing rotted jungle fatigues. I waded over to the bank. I walked to the skeleton. I shone my light on the dog tags. I reached out and brushed the dust away to read the name. Miller. J. CPT. I stared at the tags. I stared at the skeleton. Then I looked at the radio. The handset was keyed. A piece of tape was wrapped around the transmit bar. The radio was broadcasting. I leaned in close. "The stone won't stop moving. Burn it. Burn it all. Airstrike on my pose." It was my voice. I looked at Tex and Sully. They were standing in the water, staring at me. "Cap," Tex whispered. "If that's you, then who are you?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we had found the source of the broadcast. We had found the extraction beacon. We had found our own graves. "Check the radio," I said. "Check the frequency. Check the serial number." Sully moved to the radio set. He wiped the dust from the data plate. "Serial number matches. It's my radio, Cap. The one we brought in. And the broadcast? It's a loop," Sully choked out. "But it's not a tape. The handset is keyed. It's transmitting live. But there's no one speaking." It's not a time loop, I said. It's a record. The city, Dow told us, it's an archive. It eats the war. It digests the soldiers. And then it makes a copy. I pointed at the skeleton. That was the original Miller. The first one. He came down here. He found this cave. He set up the beacon. And he died here, calling for help that never came. Then who are we? Sully asked. I looked at my hands. We're the echo. We're the story the stone tells itself. We're just another recording, playing out the same mission, over and over again. No, Tex growled. I ain't no ghost, Cap. I bleed. The stone remembers everything, I said. That's what the carvings were. That's what the voices were. It takes the memories, the pain, the fear, and it builds a new cast. So what do we do? Sully asked. No, I said. We finished the mission. The original Miller, he didn't call for extraction. Listen to the tape. He wasn't trying to get out. He was trying to destroy the archive. Because he was alone, I said, and he didn't have a FAC overhead. I grabbed the handset from the skeleton's grip. The tape holding the transmit bar down crumbled under my thumb. The broadcast stopped. Sully, I said, hook up the battery from your smashed radio. See if we can boost the signal. Tex, check the generator. If it has fuel, we need max power. What are you going to do, Cap? I'm going to do what he couldn't, I said. I'm going to make the call. We worked in a frenzy. Sully stripped the wires and jury-rigged them to the beacon's power supply. Tex got the generator sputtering to life. I held the handset. It felt cold and heavy. Ready? I asked. Sully nodded. Power is good. Signal is fluctuating, Cap. But it's there. We have a carrier wave. I keyed the mic. Any station. Any station. This is Arkansas 10. Requesting immediate air support. Coordinates follow. Static. Just the hiss. Any station. This is Arkansas 10. We have a massive enemy complex. We are in the open. Requesting Broken Arrow. I repeat, Broken Arrow. All available aircraft. For a long moment there was nothing. Then, a voice cut through. Arkansas 10. This is Kingpin. I read you 5 by 5. Say again your status. Over. My heart stopped. Kingpin. A real voice. Kingpin. This is Arkansas, I said. We are deep in the box. We have discovered a hostile structure. It is not conventional. We need it leveled. Coordinates are my position. Beacon is active. Copy, Arkansas. I have your beacon. It's bright and hot. But 10. Check your position. My charts show you are underground. Are you in a tunnel complex? Affirmative, I said. We are under the target. The target is the mountain. The target is the valley. You need to drop everything you have. Napalm. High drag. Delayed fuse. Crack the earth open, Kingpin. There was a pause. Arkansas, be advised. We have a flight of phantoms inbound with heavy ordnance. But if you are under the target, we cannot guarantee your safety. Danger close is an understatement. I looked at Tex. I looked at Sully. Tex nodded slowly. He understood. Sully closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "Do it, Cap," he whispered. "End the loop." "Kingpin," I said into the handset. "We are aware. Bring the rain. Burn it out. Arkansas 10 out." I dropped the handset. It swung by its cord. "They're coming," I said. We sat down on the dry shelf, next to the bones of the man who had tried and failed before us. Above us, through the miles of rock, I could feel a vibration. The sound of jet engines. "They're fast," Tex said, looking up. The roar built to a crescendo. Then came the whistling. The terrifying, beautiful shriek of bombs falling. Boom. The first impact shook the cavern like a rag doll. Dust rained down. A stalactite crashed into the water. Boom. 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 The explosions were rhythmic, walking across the valley floor above us. I could imagine the scene up there. The napalm spreading. The high explosive rounds shattering the black basalt towers. "Is it enough?" Sully yelled over the noise. "Is it enough to kill the city?" "I don't know," I shouted back. "But it's enough to hurt it." The cave roof began to crack. A massive fissure opened up directly above us, revealing a glimpse of that bruised purple sky, now streaked with the orange fire of burning jelly. The city was screaming, not the mechanical scream of the road. This was a sound of agony, a psychic shriek that pierced through the noise of the bombs. The cave roof cracked open. The green mist was pouring out, venting up, trying to flee. But the fire caught it. The napalm mixed with the green mist, and the reaction was blinding. I saw Tex dissolve. He didn't burn, he just unraveled, turning into a cloud of static. I saw Sully look at me one last time, a peaceful smile on his face, before he too scattered. And then the light took me. It wasn't painful. It felt like waking up. I felt the weight of the gear lift. I felt the memories of the war wash away. I was floating. And then, I opened my eyes. I was sitting in a chair, a comfortable leather chair. There was a glass of whiskey in my hand. A ceiling fan was spinning slowly overhead. I blinked, looking around. I was in a study. My study. In my house in Virginia. The window was open, and I could hear the crickets singing in the summer night. I looked down at my hands. They were clean. No scars. No dirt. I stood up, my legs shaking. I walked to the window and looked out. My daughter Sarah was playing in the yard. She looked up and waved. "Daddy, come see." I stumbled back, gripping the windowsill. It was a dream, I told myself. Just a nightmare. A PTSD flashback. I'm home. I made it back. But then I saw it. On the desk next to the bottle of whiskey sat a rock. It was a small, perfectly square piece of black basalt. Smooth. Heavy. Light-absorbing. I walked over to it. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't stop myself. My hand reached out, trembling. I picked it up. It was cold. Ice cold. And as I held it, I heard a sound. Faint. Tiny. Coming from inside the stone. Static. And then, a voice. My voice. Arkansas 10. Requesting immediate air support. Coordinates follow. I dropped the rock. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. The walls of my study flickered. Just for a second. The bookshelf, the window, the view of my daughter. They rippled like a reflection in a disturbed pond. And behind the image of my home, for just a fraction of a second, I saw the black stone walls of the cavern. I saw the skeleton. I saw the strobe light flashing in the dark. Then the image stabilized. The room was normal again. But I knew. I fell into the chair, staring at the black stone on the floor. I wasn't home. I hadn't escaped. The airstrike hadn't destroyed the city. It had just reset the loop. The city had taken the energy of the explosion and used it to build a new layer of the archive. A better cage. It had given me exactly what I wanted. It had given me peace. It had given me home. But it was just a carving, a bas relief in my mind. I picked up the glass of whiskey. I took a sip. It tasted like copper. It tasted like ozone. It tasted like stone. I looked at the rock again. The tiny voice was still whispering from inside it. Burn it. Burn it all. I closed my eyes and leaned back. I listened to the crickets, knowing they were just recordings. I waited for the loop to end, for the simulation to break down, for the jungle to grow back through the floorboards. Because Tao was right. You cannot blow up a mountain. You cannot kill a memory. We are the echo. And the stone remembers everything. The official report on Recon Team Arkansas lists them as missing in action, presumed killed by enemy forces. The coordinates of their last known location were heavily bombed, turning the valley into a cratered wasteland. Satellite imagery of that sector today shows a strange anomaly. The jungle has grown back, thick and impenetrable. But in the center of the valley, there is a perfect circle where the trees grow twice as tall as the surrounding forest. The locals don't go there. They say the wind in that valley doesn't sound like wind. They say it sounds like voices. And deep in the archives of the Pentagon, in a box marked for incineration but never destroyed, there is a rubbing taken from a stone wall. It shows a soldier holding a radio, screaming into the handset. The detail is incredible. You can see the terror in his eyes. You can see the name tape on his uniform. Miller. And if you put your ear close to the paper, in the dead of night when the building is quiet, you can almost hear him screaming. The stone won't stop moving.